Listen, this is very important for all mothers. It is 1975. A developmental psychologist named Edward Tronick is sitting in a laboratory at Harvard University with a very simple idea and no real certainty about what it is going to show him. The idea is this. What if a parent, warm, engaged, completely present, simply stopped responding? Not left the room. Not raised their voice. Not done anything dramatic or frightening. Just stopped. Went blank. Held eye contact but offered nothing. No smile. No nod. No sound. No response to anything the baby did or said or reached toward. Just a face. An empty, expressionless, present but completely unreachable face. For 2 minutes. What Tronick saw in those 2 minutes, what the babies did, what they tried, how their bodies responded, how quickly they deteriorated and then, crucially, how they recovered when the parent returned, produced findings so significant, so disturbing and so illuminating about the human need for connection that the still face experiment, as it became known, is now one of the most replicated studies in the entire history of developmental psychology. And here is why I need you to watch this with me today. Because every single parent watching this video has done a version of the still face. Not in a laboratory. Not deliberately. Not because they wanted to cause harm. But because we live in a world that is full of things that pull our face away. Our attention away. Our presence away. The phone. The worry. The exhaustion. The 1,000-yard stare of a parent who has been on since 5 a.m. and has nothing left to give in this particular moment. And most parents have never been told what happens to their baby in those moments. What the baby tries. What the baby feels. What the baby's nervous system does when the most important face in the world goes blank. Once you understand it, once you really understand it at the level of what is happening inside your baby, you will not just see your phone differently. You will see your baby differently. You will see yourself differently. And you will understand, with a precision that is almost overwhelming, exactly why your presence is the most irreplaceable thing you have to offer your child. Let us go deep. To understand the still face experiment, you need to understand what was happening in developmental psychology in the early 1970s. At that time, the dominant view of infants was essentially passive. Babies were understood to be receivers of care, they were fed, held, soothed, stimulated, but they were not understood to be active participants in a relationship. The idea that a baby had a sophisticated social agenda, that they were doing something intentional and strategic in their interactions with their caregivers, was not mainstream. Edward Tronick changed that. Tronick had been studying mother-infant interaction for years. And what he had noticed, through careful observation, was that the exchanges between parents and babies were not one-sided. They were reciprocal. They were rhythmic. They had the structure of a conversation even before the baby had a single word. The parent would smile. The baby would smile back. The parent would make a sound. The baby would respond with a sound of their own. The parent would look away briefly. The baby would wait and then re-engage. Back and forth, a dance of connection so intricate and so precisely timed that Tronick described it as a beautifully choreographed duet. And he wanted to know what happened to the baby when the music stopped. The experiment worked like this. In the first phase, the parent and baby engaged normally, warmly, responsively, the usual dance of looks and sounds and smiles. The baby was happy, engaged, doing what babies do when they feel completely seen and responded to. Then the researcher gave a signal. And the parent stopped. They held eye contact with their baby. They did not look away. They did not leave. They simply made their face completely neutral. No expression. No response. No matter what the baby did, reached, smiled, made sounds, pointed, the parent gave nothing back. A present face. An absent person. And what happened next is the part that, even now, 50 years later, is genuinely difficult to watch. The baby noticed immediately. Within seconds. Not minutes. Seconds. The baby looked at the parent's face and something shifted in their expression, a flicker of confusion. They tried again. Offered a smile. A reach. A sound. The specific bid for connection that had worked a moment ago. Nothing. The baby tried again. More urgently this time. A different strategy. A louder sound. A more emphatic gesture. Their body leaning forward. Their eyes searching the parent's face for the response that was not coming. Still nothing. And then, and this is the part that researchers were not fully prepared for, the baby began to deteriorate. The smile stopped. The reaching stopped. The baby turned away from the parent and looked at the floor, or to the side, as if removing themselves from a situation they could not fix. Their posture changed, the open, leaning-in body of an engaged infant became closed, hunched, withdrawn. Some babies began to vocalize distress. Some went silent in a way that was more alarming than crying. Some began repetitive self-soothing movements, rocking, hand-mouthing, the behaviors of a nervous system that has lost its external regulator and is desperately trying to regulate itself. All of this in under 2 minutes. In under 2 minutes, the withdrawal of a parent's emotional presence produced visible, measurable, physical deterioration in a healthy, securely attached, well-loved baby. And then the researcher gave the signal again. The parent returned. Smiled. Re-engaged. Reached for the baby. Offered everything they had withheld. And the baby, after a moment of wariness, of checking, of making sure this was real, came back. Relief flooded their face. They reached. They re-engaged. The dance resumed. But not immediately. Not instantly. There was a lag. A period of checking. A period of what researchers described as testing the waters, making sure the return was real before committing to it fully. Tronick called this the reunion phase. And what happened in the reunion phase told him as much as what had happened in the still face phase. Because the baby had learned something in those 2 minutes. Not consciously. Not deliberately. But at a neurological level, in the fastest and most permanent kind of learning a young brain is capable of. The world had been unreliable for 2 minutes. And the baby's nervous system had registered it. And even after the world became reliable again, the nervous system needed time to trust the return. The observable behavior of the still-face baby is disturbing enough. But what the subsequent decades of research revealed about what is happening inside the baby, neurologically, physiologically, chemically, is what makes this experiment so significant. Let us start with the stress response. Within seconds of the parent's face going blank, the baby's amygdala, the brain's threat detection center, activates. Not because anything dangerous has happened in the conventional sense. No loud noise. No physical threat. No pain. But the amygdala does not only respond to physical danger. It responds to social danger. And for a baby whose survival depends completely on the responsiveness of their caregiver, an unresponsive caregiver face is, at a neurological level, a threat signal. The amygdala fires. Cortisol begins to rise. The stress response cascade activates. And here is the part that is most important for parents to understand. Babies cannot internally regulate their own stress response. The prefrontal cortex, the part of the brain that steps in for adults and says this is not actually dangerous, stand down, is not yet capable of performing that function. It will not be, for years. What babies use instead of internal regulation is what neuroscientists call co-regulation. They borrow the regulatory capacity of their caregiver. The parent's calm face, warm voice, responsive presence, these are not just nice things for the baby to experience. They are the baby's primary stress regulation mechanism. They are the baby's nervous system, externalized. And when that external regulator goes blank, when the face that the baby's nervous system uses to calibrate its own state becomes unreadable and unresponsive, the baby's stress response system has nowhere to go. It escalates. Research from the University of Massachusetts, building on Tronick's original work, measured cortisol levels in infants during the still face procedure. What they found confirmed what the behavior was already suggesting. During the still face phase, cortisol rose measurably and significantly. The baby's body was in a genuine stress response, not a performed one, not a learned one. A biological one. Heart rate increased. Breathing changed. The physiological markers of stress were as real as if something actually dangerous had happened. Because for the baby's nervous system, something actually dangerous had happened. The most important face in the world had disappeared. And in the absence of that face, in the absence of that specific, known, trusted, responsive presence, the baby's brain did the only rational thing a baby brain can do. It concluded that something had gone wrong. Now here is the piece of this that is most relevant to ordinary parenting life. Because some parents hear about the still face experiment and think, well, I would never do that deliberately. I would never just go blank in front of my baby like that. And that is probably true. But the still face experiment is not only relevant to deliberate, 2-minute laboratory procedures. It is relevant to every moment of habitual inattention. Every scroll. Every 1,000-yard stare. Every time a parent's face is physically present but emotionally elsewhere. Research from Boston Children's Hospital found that infants exposed to repeated brief episodes of parental emotional unavailability, not sustained neglect, not abuse, just the ordinary emotional absence of an exhausted or distracted parent, showed measurable differences in their stress response systems compared to infants whose caregivers were more consistently emotionally present. Not differences that could not be repaired, but differences that were real and measurable. Your baby is reading your face constantly. All day long. It is the primary way they understand the world, through the mirror of your emotional response to it. When your face is open and responsive, your baby's nervous system is calibrated to safe. When your face is blank or absent or focused elsewhere, your baby's nervous system registers the shift. They notice. Every time. Faster than you can imagine. The most important part of the still face experiment is not the still face phase. It is what comes after. Because Tronick was not only interested in what happened to babies when connection was withdrawn. He was interested in what happened when it was restored. And what he found in the reunion phase became, arguably, the most important contribution his research made to developmental science. When the parent returned, when the blank face was replaced by the warm, responsive, present face the baby knew, the babies did not simply snap back to their previous state. They recovered. But the recovery had a shape. A rhythm. A process. First there was a moment of wariness. Of checking. Of looking at the parent's face and verifying that the return was real. That the warmth was genuine. That this was not another temporary reprieve before another withdrawal. This checking period was brief in securely attached babies. They reached relatively quickly. They re-engaged relatively easily. The trust, though shaken, was strong enough to survive the rupture. But here is what Tronick observed that changed how developmentalists understood attachment. The babies who recovered fastest and most completely were not the babies who had been most sheltered from distress. They were not the babies who had never cried, never struggled, never been in a difficult interaction. They were the babies with the most consistent history of repair. Babies whose caregivers had reliably returned after moments of disconnection. Babies whose experience of the world included not just attunement but repeated cycles of attunement, rupture, and repair. Babies who had learned, through accumulated experience, that the return was reliable. Tronick developed a concept from this that has since become one of the most important ideas in developmental psychology. He called it the mismatch and repair cycle. And his argument was radical for its time. The goal of parenting, he argued, is not perfect attunement. It never was. Perfect attunement is not possible and was never the standard. Research showed that even the most sensitive, responsive, consistently warm parents were only in sync with their babies about 30% of the time. The other 70% involved mismatch, moments of misread cues, mistimed responses, distraction, fatigue, ordinary human imperfection. What mattered was not the absence of mismatch. what mattered was the repair. Every time a parent noticed a disconnection and moved toward reconnection, every time they looked up from the phone and made eye contact, every time they registered the baby's bid for attention and responded to it, every time they came back after being away, they were completing a cycle that the baby's nervous system was using to build its fundamental model of the world. The model that says, when things go wrong, they can be made right. When connection is lost, it can be found again. When the face goes blank, it comes back. This model, this deep neurological expectation of repair, is one of the foundations of what psychologists call secure attachment. And secure attachment, the research consistently shows, is one of the strongest predictors of positive outcomes across almost every domain of a person's life. Mental health, relationship quality, academic resilience, professional functioning. The capacity to navigate difficulty without being destroyed by it. It is not built by perfect parenting. It is built by imperfect parenting that repairs. I want to talk about something that Tronick could not have anticipated in 1975 but that his research speaks to with striking precision. The smartphone. Not because smartphones are evil or because using a phone near your baby makes you a bad parent. But because the smartphone has introduced into family life a new kind of emotional absence that the still face experiment illuminates in a way that nothing else quite does. Research from Boston University published in 2014 studied parent-child interactions in a fast food restaurant. Not in a laboratory. In an ordinary public setting. And what they observed was that parents who were absorbed in their phones were significantly less responsive to their children's bids for attention. Children of absorbed parents tried harder, escalated more, and when escalation failed, withdrew. A small-scale still face. Repeated. Ordinary. Unintentional. A follow-up study from the University of Michigan examined the specific effect of parental smartphone use during face-to-face time with infants and toddlers. They found that even brief episodes of parental phone absorption, the parent looking down, scrolling, reading, produced measurable increases in bid for attention behavior in infants. The babies tried harder to get the face back. And when the face did not return, they gave up. That giving up, that moment when a baby stops trying and turns away or goes quiet, is the still face response made ordinary. Made habitual. Made a background feature of daily life in a way that no parent intends but that happens anyway because the phone is always there and the pull of it is real and exhaustion is real and the demand of constant presence is genuinely, honestly enormous. I am not saying this to shame. I am saying this because I think parents deserve to know what is happening in their baby's nervous system in those moments. Not so they can never look at their phone again, that is not realistic and it is not what the research asks. But so they can make the choice with full information. So they can choose presence in the moments that matter most. And so they know, and this is the repair piece, that when they look up, when they put the phone down, when they meet the baby's eyes and smile, they are doing something significant. They are completing the cycle. They are being the return. Jenny Raidsky, the lead researcher on the Boston University study, was careful to note in her findings that the goal is not perfect, unbroken attention. It is responsiveness to the child's bids for connection. It is noticing when the baby has reached and reaching back. Not constant presence. Consistent return. That distinction, between perfect presence and consistent return, is one of the most liberating things developmental science has ever produced for parents. You do not need to be available every moment. You need to come back. The still face experiment was conducted in a laboratory with a specific and deliberately dramatic procedure. Real parenting life is not that. Real parenting life is ordinary and imperfect and full of moments where your face is elsewhere, your attention is fractured, your presence is partial. That is normal. That is human. That is not what the research is asking you to change. What the research is asking, with remarkable consistency across 50 years of replication and extension of Tronick's original work, is something more specific and more achievable than perfect presence. It is asking you to be a reliable returner. Here's what that looks like in practice. It looks like looking up when your baby makes a sound. Not every sound. Not immediately every time, but often enough that the baby's experience of you is of a face that comes back. A presence that returns. A person who notices. It looks like making eye contact during feeding, not every feed, but some feeds, in a way that is fully there rather than physically present but mentally absent. It looks like the moment of reconnection when you walk into the room after being away. The specific, deliberate, I see you that you offer with your face and your voice and your body before you do anything else. It looks like repair. The moment you realize you have been somewhere else, in your head, in your phone, in the worry, and you come back. You look at your baby. You smile. You make the bid for connection that says I am here now. Research from Tronic's own later work found that the timing of repair mattered significantly. The longer the gap between disconnection and repair, the more the baby's stress response escalated and the longer recovery took. Short gaps, brief absences followed by quick returns, had significantly less impact than sustained emotional unavailability. This is enormously reassuring, because it means that the ordinary, unavoidable moments of parental distraction, the brief scroll, the moment lost in thought, the conversation with another adult, are not the problem. They are part of normal, healthy parenting. The practice is simply the return. The noticing. The coming back. You do not need to eliminate the moments of absence. You need to shorten the gap between absence and return. And every time you do, every time you look up, every time you make eye contact, every time your face opens toward your baby after being elsewhere, you are completing a cycle that their nervous system is using to build something permanent and foundational. The knowledge that the world is responsive. That connection, once lost, can be found. That the people who matter most come back. That is not a small thing. That is the architecture of trust. And trust, built in these early years, does not stay in the nursery. It goes everywhere your child ever goes. I want to end this video with something Edward Tronick said in an interview years after the still face experiment had become famous. Something that is rarely quoted but that I think is the most important thing he ever said about what his research actually means. He was asked whether parents who had learned about the still face experiment felt guilty. Whether knowing what happened to babies during 2 minutes of emotional absence made parents feel like they were constantly failing. And his answer was this. He said that guilt was the wrong response entirely. Because the still face experiment was never designed to show how fragile babies are. It was designed to show how resilient they are. A healthy baby, with a history of responsive caregiving, experiences 2 minutes of emotional absence and deteriorates. And then recovers. Fully and quickly. Because the foundation of secure attachment is strong enough to survive the rupture. The still face is not evidence of how easily babies are broken. It is evidence of how powerfully they are designed to seek connection. How persistently they try. How fiercely they reach. And how completely they can recover when the connection returns. The baby in the experiment is not a cautionary tale about the damage parents cause. It is a love story about the lengths a baby will go to in order to reconnect with the person they love most. They try everything they know. They exhaust their strategies. They go quiet when nothing works. And then, when the face comes back, they reach. They always reach. Because the love is stronger than the rupture. The reaching is stronger than the giving up. And the return, the simple, ordinary, imperfect, reliable return, is stronger than any of it. You are going to go blank sometimes. You are going to be elsewhere sometimes. You are going to be so depleted that your face has nothing left to offer. That is not failure. That is being human in the most demanding role that exists. What matters is the return. Come back to the face of your child. As many times as it takes. As many times as the day requires. Come back imperfectly and late and after the phone and after the worry and after everything that pulls you away. Just come back. Because your baby is waiting. They are always waiting. And when you return, when your face opens toward theirs and the connection reestablishes, something happens in both your nervous systems simultaneously. Oxytocin rises. Cortisol falls. The threat assessment standing down. The dance resuming. And in that moment, that ordinary, unremarkable, irreplaceable moment, you are doing something that no one else in the world can do for this particular child. You are being the return. And that is everything. Subscribe to NurtureNest, because every week we go exactly this deep into the science of raising children and taking care of yourself while you do it. And leave a comment below. Did you know about the still face experiment before today? And did it change how you think about the ordinary moments of presence and distraction in your day? I read every single one.